The sonar ping rang out steadily, like the ocean's artificial heartbeat. On September 2, 1991, off New Jersey, a long, narrow shadow appeared on Seeker's deck monitor, lying motionless at nearly 73 meters. Veteran Captain Bill Nagel frowned. There shouldn't be anything there. Minutes later, flashlight beams tore through the milky haze. A silent, conning tower emerged, furred with anemones, rust flaking like old blood. Not a barge, not a freighter, a steel wolf of the Kriegsmarine, a U-boat. But it was in the wrong place. Every wartime record, German and Allied, insisted these waters belonged to no missing U-boat. The silence at that depth was more than an absence of sound. It was a gap in official history. From that void, a secret slowly rose, one that may have kept humanity from the brink of catastrophe. To understand the shiver that ran through 1991, you have to go back to the lightless years of the Second World War. The Atlantic was the lifeline of the Allied war effort. Every convoy crossing carried food, oil, weapons, ammunition. Without them, Britain would starve, its defenses fail, its counterattack come too late. Hitler knew it. U-boats, steel sharks, prowled beneath the black water and drove thousands of vessels to the bottom. More than 3,500 ships, 14 million tons of cargo, and tens of thousands of lives. The numbers were enough to turn the Atlantic into a graveyard. Among those steel wolves, U-869 stands out not for victories, but for a fate out of place. It was born in Bremen on October 5, 1943, a Type 1 C-40, nearly 77 meters long, with 6 torpedo tubes and capacity for 22 torpedoes. Yard talk and build sheets suggested something different about it. Reinforced hull, a conning tower wired with new generation radio gear, and in the stern, a device known in detail to only a handful in Berlin. The whispers said it wasn't built merely to hunt freighters. On January 26, 1944, U-869 joined the fleet under Kapitänleutnant Helmut Neuerberg, 30, cold blue eyes, iron will, respected for discipline and command craft. The 56-man crew mixed fervent believers in propaganda with battle-hardened sailors and ordinary young men. Radio operator Martin Horenberg, dreaming of studying electrical engineering after the war. Machinist Franz Neumann, leaving a wife and toddler behind. Torpedoman Karl Vrage, who collected stamps and wrote poems. Ordinary lives stepping into an extraordinary machine. By late 1944, the board had flipped. The Red Army surged from the east. The Allies held the western coast after Normandy. German cities turned to red rubble under bombs. On December 8, 1944, U-869 left Kristiansand into Norway's cold wind. The official order: patrol and attack Allied convoys off the U.S. East Coast. Weeks later, the Submarine Command transmitted a new instruction to divert to Gibraltar. But wartime radio was fickle. Signals drifted, jammed, were intercepted. On January 6 and 8, 1945, 2 final messages came. Then silence. On February 11, 1945, off New Jersey, American escorts USS Howard D. Crowe and USS Coiner acquired a vague underwater target and dropped depth charges for hours. The report read, "Unidentified submarine, destroyed." The war ended. The files closed. U-869 was listed as sunk near Gibraltar. Next of kin received a cold slip of paper. Missing in action. Back in 1991, the nameless find took on the community's nickname, U-Who. 2 names would follow the boat down into the bedrock of history. John Chatterton, an iron-disciplined diver obsessed with missing pieces, and Richie Kohler, whose technical eye could read a ship's identity from a single rivet. They dropped to 73 meters of cold water, laying guidelines while fighting invisible snares, old nets draped over the hull, razor edges of metal, corridors tangled like a maze. The price was steep. Steve Feldman became entangled in cabling in 1992. Chris Rouse suffered decompression embolism after surfacing too fast in 1993. Charlie Maguire vanished in the aft compartments in 1996. 3 silhouettes sank into the history of history itself. Whenever weather allowed, Seeker returned. Minutes snatched on the bottom were traded for fragments. German spec screws, Gothic letters, parts stamped with Kriegsmarine marks, personal items, a toothbrush, a photograph of a mother with a child, everyday traces amid cold steel. The turn came in 1995. In the officers' quarters, Kohler brushed away rust silt and lifted a mess hall knife. On the darkened handle, a name was carved, Horenberg. A name became a key. Cross-checking archives, they found Martin Horenberg, age 20, radio operator on U-8699. The divers went back for a smoking gun, a serial plate on the diesel block matching Deschimag AG Weser records in Bremen, an exact hit. You know who had a real name? U-869. The U.S. Navy acknowledged it in 1997. Identifying the boat was only the outer layer. The core questions were why it died here and how. Common explanations held that U-869 was finished by Crow and Coiner's depth charges, or by a circular run torpedo, a documented accident that had killed other U-boats such as U-377 and U-972. But the damage profile said something else. In the forward torpedo room, the hull was torn outward. Steel plates flared like the petals of a blooming iron flower. An internal blast, not an external crush. Several tubes remained sealed. There were no signs of engagement, no SOS, no emergency ascent scar. In the radio compartment, there were traces of a message never sent. Amid the torpedo room wreckage, they also found a torpedo whose warhead had been replaced by a strange device, a metal cylinder with antenna clusters and wiring not shown on standard Kriegsmarine plans. If it wasn't depth charges or a wayward torpedo, who detonated from within and why? In 1999, the documentary Hitler's Lost Sub aired on PBS. Millions watched, and one elderly German froze. Herbert Gasevsky, a former radio man who had nearly served on U-869. He recognized Horenberg's knife, recognized friends in the crew list. All his life he had believed they died off Gibraltar. Now he learned their grave was off America. Gazevsky recalled a mysterious civilian boarding before departure. A short, balding man with glasses, flawless German but a faintly odd accent. Assigned a private cabin, speaking only with the captain. In his December 1944 journal, Gostevsky had jotted words overheard through a bulkhead. New weapon. Changed the course of the war. None of this appeared in official muster rolls. The more they tried to assemble the picture, the sharper the dark areas grew. Something exceeded an ordinary patrol. In 2025 at MIT, Dr. Sarah Mitchell's team used quantum AI methods to restore Kriegsmarine materials degraded by seawater, reconstructing ink at a molecular trace level, deciphering fragmentary enigma traffic, verifying paper and ink isotopes. From the sludge of characters, keywords bobbed up like corks. Nordmaven, Wunderwaffe 7, Scuttle if detected, Ragnarok. Fragments of Neuerberg's supposedly lost journal surfaced. A secret order from Donitz, a meeting with Dr. Fisher, a cover name, W7, described as a cylinder with antennas, yet capable of shifting the balance of power in the Atlantic. Technical scraps took shape. Wunderwaffe 7 was not an explosive warhead, but an extreme power electronic warfare unit, combining interception and decryption with full-spectrum deception, spoofing Allied transmitters, injecting false orders, jamming in blended bands, disorganizing escort formations, and peeling convoys into traps. Nordmaven's goal was not fire more torpedoes, but to choke the enemy's perception, information, and coordination for hours or days at the height of the spring 1945 shipping surge. U-869 was the coordinating flagship, carrying the master W7 module and an EW specialist, the mysterious Dr. Fisher. The documents also outlined an emergency protocol. If capture of the device became possible, execute the alternate plan. Destroy everything on the spot. The phrase, "scuttle if detected," placed a moral blade in the captain's hand. On January 8, 1945, U-869's last transmission reported contact with anti-submarine forces, entering radio silence and initiating the alternate plan. By February 11th, when Crow and Coiner combed the area with depth charges, Neuerberg's choice had closed every path. No deployment of W7, no surrender, an internal detonation instead. The hull blew outward from the torpedo room. 56 men joined the cold water. The Secret sank with them. In one branch of possible history, had U-869 been captured intact, W7 might have become a lever for whichever side held it. In another, had W7 been deployed unseen, the spring 1945 convoys might have broken. The final Allied offensive delayed 8 to 12 months, and a desperate war machine might have lunged into a doomsday option. Mass destruction at the edge of defeat. Modern simulations, as the video's account suggests, sketch a different Europe. Nuclear detonations over capitals in 1946, humanity pulled into a long, radioactive night. If the 2125 reconstruction is right, Neuerberg's decision was the stop that saved the world. Back inside the wreck, life still seemed to breathe in half-finished gestures. A coffee cup on the mess table, an open copy of Faust, a letter in the captain's cabin with only the opening lines to his wife before the ink washed into pale ghosts. On a metal bulkhead were geometric marks, intersecting circles, spirals, triangles with dots, matching no known Kriegsmarine codebook. In the W7 bay were anomalous components, unusual alloys with rare elements, a few parts with isotope signatures associated with later-era processes. At the edge of knowledge, fact, and uncertainty touched. Forgery, error, or flotsam from a diverted stream of technology. Horenberg's notes described strange signals near 2.847 GHz, language like German, but not quite, as if news had arrived from tomorrow. Neumann wrote about instruments returning impossible values, a compass pointing toward magnetic poles that did not exist. Werner Schmidt, 18, wrote on January 3, 1945, "I dreamed we will all die in a week and be remembered in 80 years. However scant, the lines suggest a crew sensing more than most of their time, or at least feeling that their deaths might carry a larger meaning. What kept the story from sliding into hollow legend were faces. Gazewski did not die with the boat because influenza kept him ashore, an unlucky twist that made him the keeper of memory. Watching the PBS film, he recognized the knife, the names, and became a living witness. He supplied the story of the civilian doctor and the small habits of each man. Horenberg's neatness, his habit of engraving his name, his dream of studying electricity, the long talks about life after the war. Through him, the 56 names recovered their human contours. The 2025 materials in the video's narrative claim 11 specialized U-boats took their stations for Nordmaven. U-869 was to coordinate. When U-869 went down, the network went blind. The remaining boats acted alone and were erased in sequence. U-10-23 rammed by a British destroyer, U-11 on a mine off Ireland, U-11-95 vanishing near the Azores, each a death, each a lock snapping shut before the threshold. In a 1978 interview, former U-1201 commander Kurt Steinbach said that Neuerberg was the best of them, that his boat carried the unit capable of guiding the other Wunderwaffen, that with his death, they lost the ability to function as one. counterfactual simulations cited by the 2025 team map an alternate world. Convoys shattered by 70%. The last offensive delayed 1 to 2 years. The German atomic project finishing in time. Nuclear strikes in 1946. And our present history never arriving in the same form. It sounds like speculative fiction, yet it serves an ethical point, reminding people of the threshold where stopping is the higher duty. At the core of the moral argument lies this: Neuerberg did not trigger W7, even when it promised visible tactical chaos. He chose to stop and to die, so that a system-level technology would not pass into anyone's hands under the wrong conditions. From that, the account proposes a modern principle, the U-869 principle, knowing when to stop in the face of technologies that pose civilization-scale risk. As general AI, quantum computing, autonomous weapons, gene editing, and fusion open unprecedented capacities, the principle asks whether tactical victory is worth an existential roll of the dice. Sometimes the highest ethics are not doing better, but knowing when enough is enough. The narrative even imagines a U-869 protocol, early warning and moratorium rules for research that carries existential danger. Another, more controversial strand in the transcript involves anomalies, out-of-era isotopes, a component etched with 1963, notes about colleagues from the future, a sketch of a chronoscope bending space-time with intense magnetic fields. These details are not there to prove metaphysics. They work as parables for the core. People rewrite history by their choices. Whether the chronoscope existed or not, the men of U-869 behaved as if they saw beyond a single battle. They acted for the whole rather than the immediate. Today, above the wreck, a joint memorial recurs each year. Descendants of U-869's crew and of the American sailors from Crow and Coiner cast wreaths into the water and bow to a shared loss. A plaque on the hull bears 56 names, and the line, "They died not knowing they saved the world." The sentence is at once tragic and modest. Those who lived it did not call themselves heroes. History, and those who followed, gave them that name. Return to that first ping. Sonar does more than see underwater. It knocks on memory. It strikes a truth bent by paperwork and swallowed by wartime radio. What the divers recovered, knife, serial plate, blast signature, Faust, the unfinished letter, are material evidence. What 2025 restored, journal fragments, secret orders, simulations, are semantic evidence. They meet at one point. People saved people by not doing what they could have done. Perhaps Neuerberg stood still for a very long second, in the dark, at 73 meters. He looked at his sailors, the young men, and all they would never live to do. He knew detonation would end everything, but leaving W7 to the enemy, or using it for an immediate edge, could end far more than a single boat. He chose the hardest death, dying for something no one would ever see, a catastrophe that did not happen. Some medals glitter in parade sunlight, others have no shape at all and are awarded in the silence of deep water. U-869 belongs to the second kind. Because of them, our sky did not burn in 1946. Because of them, today's ethical debates have a precedent to lean on. When to pause? How much is enough? Which victory is worth the future? Perhaps the U-869 principle should be the first line of every new technological charter. When system-level risk rises beyond what humans can bear, stop. When tactical success can be traded for the future, stop. Each year off New Jersey, wreaths touch the sea. The surface closes. The ping fades. Somewhere between two waves, a very quiet answer remains. They chose the hard part so the rest of us could choose the right one.